Okay, ladies and gentlemen, well, thanks for coming along to Yes Benarty's third evening of speakers. Dennis Canavan was born and brought up in County. Dennis was a Labour MP for 25 years and an independent MSD for 8 years. He now chairs the Advisory Board of Yes Scotland. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dennis Canavan.
Thank you, Chairman, for your kind words of introduction, and thank you for reminding me that once upon a time I had a real job. That was when I was teaching the bairns, or trying to teach the bairns of the lingerie. That was a long time ago. And then I was relegated by the electorate to a less honourable profession. But there you go. I'm a convert to the cause of independence, and I would like to tell you something about the political journey which brought me to this destination. I come from a Labour background. I was virtually born and brought up in the Labour Party. In fact, my late grandfather, Frank Canavan, was one of the founding members of the first branch of the Labour Party in this county of Fife, and that was away around about the turn of the 19th, 20th centuries. My granddad wasn't born in Fife, he wasn't born in Scotland, he was born in Ireland, and he came here as the youngest of a family of 11. I suppose nowadays you would call them economic migrants. They were looking for work, and there was work available at that time in Fife, in the coalfields elsewhere. Grandad left school at the age of 10. He wanted to work down the pit, but he was told that he was too young, because at that time there was an Act of Parliament which said that women and children could not work underground, and the child at that time was defined as someone under the age of 12. So my grandad had to wait until he reached the ripe old age of 12 before he went to work underground at number 7 pit in County Beath. And he spent virtually his whole life in the labour and the trade union movement, and also in local government, fighting to improve things for his fellow workers and also for his fellow citizens. It's worth recalling, what was it that these socialist pioneers, because there were socialists in the Labour Party at that time, it's worth recalling, what was it that they were fighting for? They were fighting for basic things like the right to work, the right to a decent living, the right to a roof over their heads for themselves and their families, the right for educational opportunity for their children, and the right to a free national health service available to all at the point of need. And what was it that drove these people? The main driving force was a hunger. Sometimes it was real hunger, a pang in the belly hunger, but always it was a hunger for social justice. And that campaign for social justice is just as relevant today in the 21st century as it was at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries when the Labour Party was born. I mean, look all around us today, look at contemporary society. Just earlier this week, the Office of National Statistics revealed that 30% of children in Scotland come from families with no real tangible wealth. Not surprisingly, on the same day, the Roundtree Foundation revealed a study indicating the link between child poverty and lack of education opportunity. And of course, we've also got a situation where thousands of people are increasingly dependent upon food banks in order to survive. And of course we have this iniquitous tax called the bedroom tax, which is causing so much suffering to many people and their families. Now, I used to think, maybe you think I was naive, but I used to think that the solution to all this was the return of a Labour government committed to socialist policy. In fact, I can remember as a young candidate, way back in the 1970s, I think it must have been the second time I stood in a general, like the 1979 general election. I can remember putting a question to the people of Scotland, and indeed it was a similar question that was put to the people of the UK. What kind of society do we want? Do we want a selfish, ruthless rat race of a society where only the strongest survive and the weakest go to the wall? Or do we want a caring, sharing society where people look out for their neighbour and where most help goes to those who are most in need? Well, by and large, at that general election in '79, by and large, the people of Scotland voted for the caring, sharing society. But we were outnumbered and outvoted from people elsewhere in the UK. And what did we get? We got a Prime Minister who had the brass neck to come up to Scotland and tell the Church of Scotland that there is no such thing as society. And the rest is history. The devastation, the decimation of our great industries, the widespread poverty, and so on. Well, history has a habit of repeating itself, doesn't it? Here we are again. Scotland is again being ruled by a government we did not elect. We have a coalition at Westminster led by the Tories, a party which has a magnificent total of one member of Parliament representing a Scottish constituency. And despite that lack of a democratic mandate from the people of Scotland, that Tory government, Tory-led coalition, call it what you want, is foisting upon the people of Scotland policies that we did not vote for and policies which we do not want. And that Tory-led coalition is rewarding the rich with massive tax handouts and punishing the poor with savage cuts in their benefits, including this iniquitous bedroom tax, which is causing so much hardship to many families. So it's understandable that people are crying out for change. But what does Westminster offer in terms of change? Well, the coalition have made it clear that they're not interested in change. They're just absolutely intransigent, that they are going to follow on their existing course, so there's no hope of change in that respect. What about the opposition at Westminster? Well, I sometimes turn on the telly and I look at my old workplace, and sometimes I look not just at the government benches but at the opposition benches, which I occupied most of the time that I was there. And what do I see? I see a leader of the opposition called Ed Miliband, who shows little, if any, commitment. I mean, it took him over a year to come out with some kind of commitment to abolish the bedroom tax, and even now he's still sticking by the benefit cap, which was imposed by the Tories, and if Mr Miliband gets power, it will be continued by the Tories. So all that's on offer there is another brand of austerity. Changing the occupancy of number 10 Downing Street will not bring about the fundamental radical change which I want to see and which I believe that the majority of the people of Scotland want to see. I have no faith whatsoever in the constitutional status quo. Now, I'm not naive. I do not see independence as a panacea which is going to cure all of Scotland's ills. But I do believe that independence offers a massive opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to bring about the fundamental transformational change which the people of Scotland want. I said earlier that I'm a convert to the cause of independence, and my conversion is not based on any emotion, it's based mainly on my experience, particularly my parliamentary experience. I spent over a quarter of a century as a Labour Member of Parliament at Westminster, followed by 8 years as an independent member of the Scottish Parliament. And I've been retired now for 7 years, and I haven't just been vegetating in retirement. Those of you who are retired like me will know that retirement gives you the time to think. It gives you time to reflect. And in my case, it gave me time and the opportunity to think outside the box, to think outside the Westminster cocoon and the cocoons which seem to enshroud a lot of politicians. And after a great deal of reflection, I have come to the conclusion that Westminster is completely out of touch with the people of Scotland. Now, what about the Scottish Parliament? Well, the Scottish Parliament, it's not perfect. I mean, it's a human organisation, and human beings, of the very nature of things, they sometimes make mistakes. But the Scottish Parliament has been in existence now for 15 years. It's not an old Parliament by world standards, but I think that within that period of 15 years, we can get a fair measure of the track record of that Parliament. And I honestly think that, by and large, the Scottish Parliament has responded far more positively, far more readily to the wishes and the needs and the aspirations of the people of Scotland. And let me give you some examples just to emphasise that. Now, I referred earlier to my granddad and his socialist pioneers, and many of them saw education as the liberation of the working class. And I can remember my granddad in local government here in this county of Fife in the 1920s. He and his colleagues laid the basis of a system of student finance to enable working class children to stay on at school beyond the statutory school leaving age, and in some cases, all too few at that time, to go on to college or university. And that was improved over the years. And indeed, most local authorities in Scotland followed suit. Fife was one of the pioneers. And then when Harold Wilson became Labour Prime Minister in the 1960s, when I was a student, then Harold Wilson introduced a national system of student grants. And it was reputed to be the most generous system of student support in the whole world. And we, perhaps in our generation, thought that this would continue, especially in periods of Labour government. And yet, what happened in 1997, after 18 long years of Tory rule? Along came a guy called Mr. Blair. Remember how he got in? He got in by ditching socialism in order to win the votes of Middle England. He came in as Prime Minister. He wouldn't understand this nonsense about liberation of the working class. Good Lord, he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. His mum and dad didn't have the script and save to go on to college or university or whatever. Heavens, he went to one of the poshest, highest fee-paying schools in Scotland. He didn't understand this whole business, and so he introduced a bill. His government introduced a bill, and it was a double whammy because they abolished student grants, even for students from low-income families, and at the same time introduced tuition fees. A lot of people actually still to this day think it was Margaret Thatcher that introduced tuition fees. It wasn't Margaret Thatcher at all. It was Tony Blair. And I suppose you could argue that his background he didn't know anywhere. But there were other guys in that cabinet that should have known better, including guys like Gordon Brown. Gordon should have known the importance of educational opportunity, particularly for people from disadvantaged backgrounds. And I remember feeling ashamed to be a member of the Parliamentary Labour Party that introduced that bill, and I told them bluntly, there is no way I am voting for that, and I spoke against it, and I voted against it. And what did they do? They took revenge against me by stopping me from being a Labour candidate for the Scottish Parliament. Anyway, I was elected as an independent with the biggest majority in Scotland, so I was quite chuffed about that. I was even more chuffed when the Scottish Parliament, in the very first session of that Parliament, brought forward a bill to abolish the upfront payment of tuition fees and subsequently, the present Scottish Government abolished tuition fees completely. Now, may I remind you that, I mean, just to compare this with what's going on to this day south of the border. South of the border, students are having to pay £9,000 per year in order to go on to university. So if you were doing a 4-year honours course here at a Scottish university, you would have to pay £36,000. That's the millstone of debt round your neck, round the necks of young people starting off a career, maybe thinking about buying a house for the first time, maybe even thinking about getting married and starting a family. What kind of culture of debt is that? And I was very proud of the fact that the Scottish Parliament introduced a much fairer system of financial support for our students. I was also very proud of the fact that they introduced a fairer system of financial support for senior citizens, including the free care for the elderly people who require that degree of care, that the personal element and the nursing element of that care is free of charge in Scotland, whereas south of the border, senior citizens have to pay, because the Sutherland report, again it was a Scotsman that introduced the Sutherland report, it was never fully implemented by Blair's government, and it's never been fully implemented by the present coalition government. It was actually Henry McLeish that did the business in Scotland, and all three, I know Henry comes in for a bit of criticism sometimes from me as well, but all credit to Henry McLeish's government for introducing that legislation to give a fairer deal for senior citizens, and that was done in the Scottish Parliament. I can think too of our National Health Service. You know what's happening to our National Health Service south of the border? It's being more and more privatised. It will soon become unrecognisable as Nye Bevan's National Health Service unless we put a stop to the trend that is happening south of the border. And it's thanks largely to the Scottish Parliament that we have still a publicly owned National Health Service with no prescription charges. In other words, it's available free at the point of use. You know, I'm appalled when I hear some of the criticism of some of these things like free care for the elderly and free prescriptions and no tuition fees for students. I even hear Labour politicians, including the leader of the Scottish, so-called Scottish Labour Party, complaining about something for nothing. Something for nothing, she says. I also hear others talking about this is all a plot by that dreadful man, Alex Salmond. He's handing out sweeties in order to bribe the people of Scotland to vote yes in this forthcoming referendum. I mean, what utter tosh. Sweeties! Sweeties! Is a free national health service a sweetie? Is a free education just a sweetie? Nye Bevan and Keir Hardie must be burning in their graves when they hear that kind of a free national health service, free education, two of the great pillars on which the Labour Party was built, and yet today's Labour politicians do not seem to recognise that. So to get back to my main point about the track record of the Scottish Parliament, I believe that the Scottish Parliament has demonstrated that it has delivered significant improvements and greater standards of social justice than what Westminster has done in recent years. And yet, the powers of the Scottish Parliament they're very limited. I think it was Carlin that pointed this out. Most of the big political decisions, and certainly most of the big economic decisions, are taken at Westminster. So I say to myself, and I say to you, that if the Scottish Parliament had the full powers of an independent Parliament, then surely it will be able to do so much more to improve opportunities for the people of Scotland. Again, let me give a few examples. If the Scottish Parliament had powers over defence and foreign affairs, then we would be able to get rid of Trident and all the other weapons of mass destruction from Scottish soil and Scottish territorial waters, and we would be able to stop our involvement in illegal warfare. If the Scottish Parliament had powers to regulate the financial institutions, we'd be able to stop this culture of bonuses on the part of some of the greedy bankers who are lining their pockets with big fat bonuses while bringing the country almost to the brink of financial ruin. And if the Scottish Parliament had powers over tax and national insurance, we'd be able to introduce a fairer, a more progressive system of taxation, whereby the rich pay more, the poor pay less, and the very poor shouldn't be paying any tax at all. And we'd also, of course, be able to abolish forthwith the bedroom tax, which would never have seen the light of day in an independent Scotland. So I don't see independence as an end in itself. I see independence as a means towards building a better Scotland, a more prosperous Scotland, and a fairer Scotland. And why stop there? I mean, I'm not really a nationalist at heart. I know that there might be some people here who are quite proud to describe themselves as nationalists, and I don't want to fall out with you about that. But I personally prefer the term internationalist, or even what was that word of Mr. Blair? What's the S word? Socialist. But anyway. There's an old Scots phrase, we're all Jock Tamson's parents. Some people might translate that as saying we're all God's children. Well, whether you believe in God or not. Another translation might be, we're all members of the human race. We're all citizens of the world. And I believe that an independent Scotland would be able to play its full part in the international community in order to build a better world. I am absolutely disgusted by some of the so-called foreign policies that are emanating from Westminster at present. Anti-Europeanism, very xenophobic, some of it racist. We've now got the UKIP tail wagging the Tory dog, and if we don't go yes in this referendum this year, then next year, the year thereafter, there may be another referendum and we find ourselves bounced out of the European Union against our will, just on the strength of UKIP and Tory votes south of the border. I want to see an independent Scotland conducting an ethical foreign policy and pursuing an immigration policy which is based on the equality of all human beings and the dignity and equal rights of all human beings, irrespective of their ethnicity, their faith, or the colour of their skin. Before I finish, there's a wee word about Yes Scotland, because I chair the advisory board of Yes Scotland. We are a very inclusive body. We consist of people from various political parties and people like myself who are not members of any political party. And sometimes it's difficult getting this idea across about the inclusiveness. You know, there's some people claim, quite wrongly, that we're just a front for the SNP. And there's a certain tribalism still in Scottish politics. You know, that some people, they'll take their voting patterns from their parents and their grandparents and their great-grandparents, almost like articles of faith handed down. And I suppose I was like that thing, there still are quite more than a few people like that around. I came across a woman recently who was a great supporter of mine through thick and thin. She was a great Labour supporter, and then when I stood as an independent candidate, she certainly supported me, but when I asked her to vote yes in the referendum, she was a bit doubtful. I'm still working on her, but her initial response was, "Oh look, Dennis, this is a step too far, son. You can't seriously expect me to vote for that man, Alexander. My father would kill me if I voted SNP." I said, "Well, Janet, for a start, your father's been deep for 20 years. There's no fear of that." And also, in this referendum, I'm not asking you to vote for Alex Salmond. I'm not asking you to vote for any political party. I am asking you to vote for a better future for the people of Scotland and for the right of the people of Scotland to choose their own government. And I think that we're getting the message across. Finally, sometimes I've often asked, can we win? Well, this time last year there was an air of conceit and complacency almost on the part of the No camp and most of the camp followers in the media. And they were saying, "Yes, waste of time, old chap, you know, we've got this in the bag." They're not so complacent now. I remember at the time saying, "This campaign is not a short sprint, it's more like a marathon." And having run more than a few marathons in my time, I know that sometimes the guy that's in front of you at the halfway mark isn't necessarily the guy that's going to be in front of you when you cross the finishing tape. And we have something in our campaign which the opposition do not have. Okay, they've got some highfalutin top brass and generals, you may call them, but you know, there's a dearth of foot soldiers in the campaign. Yes, they've got a lot of media presence. Some people might say that they have an unfair media advantage, particularly in the print media. But I'll tell you something, this campaign is not going to be won simply in TV studios or radio studios, and it's not going to be won simply in the column inches of newspapers. This campaign is going to be fought and won at grassroots community level throughout Scotland. And we have something which the opposition do not have. I mean, for example, this back hall here tonight, you'll not see many no meetings like this. You have to draft them in with a 3-line whip almost, and payroll vote. But I've been on a tour of Scotland, more than one tour of Scotland in fact, and I can tell you that we have got packed meetings like this throughout many of the communities in Scotland. And something even more important is the fact that we have an army of foot soldiers. The other lot have a dearth of foot soldiers. We have an army of foot soldiers based throughout every part of Scotland. And once we get that army of foot soldiers fully trained and mobilised, you are going to see the most successful grassroots community-based campaign that Scotland has ever seen. We are determined to win the hearts and minds of the people of Scotland, and we are going to take our message out to every village, every town, every city, every college, every school, every university, every shopping centre, every home in Scotland. And our message is quite simple, and it is this: that it is only by voting yes in this referendum that the people of Scotland are going to be empowered to build a better Scotland, a more prosperous Scotland, a fairer Scotland, and play their full part in the international community in order to build a better world. That is our message, and when we succeed in getting that message across to the people of Scotland, we are going to win a famous and historic victory. So I say to you, the people of Benarty, let's go for it!